This video took 200 hours to produce, with a total duration of 17 minutes. It takes you on a comprehensive journey through World War II from the German perspective. After Germany's defeat in World War I, how did it manage to rise rapidly within just 20 years, nearly conquering all of Europe? What exactly did Germany go through during this period? On November 11, 1918, after Germany's defeat in World War I, Western powers like Britain and France, aiming to prevent Germany's resurgence, forced it to sign the unequal Treaty of Versailles. This treaty required Germany to cede 1/5 of its territory, all its overseas colonies, and pay 150 billion marks in war reparations. These actions quickly impacted the German populace, leading to widespread demonstrations and intense public dissatisfaction. To revive the German economy, Chancellor Hindenburg implemented a stopgap measure, continuous printing of money to alleviate domestic tensions. However, this soon backfired. Excessive currency issuance led to unprecedented devaluation of the German mark. By 1922, 900 marks were needed to exchange for $1. At the mark's lowest point, a loaf of bread could cost 500,000 marks, an amount so vast it couldn't even fill a car. Germany's economy was in complete collapse. It was during this time that Adolf Hitler and his Nazi party emerged. Hitler initially traveled across Germany's taverns, delivering impassioned speeches that highlighted the country's economic and political issues. He told the desperate populace, "Since you have no other choice, join my party." He promised that every German citizen would own a car, that bread would never cost 500,000 marks again, and that the humiliating Treaty of Versailles would be torn up. His rhetoric gained increasing support for the Nazi party, which by 1932 had become Germany's largest party. Hitler eventually won the popular vote by 3 million votes, becoming the Führer of Germany. To accelerate Germany's development, Hitler focused on heavy industry and military equipment. However, the Treaty of Versailles limited Germany's army to 100,000 men, restricted its navy, and prohibited an air force, including naval aviation and any military aircraft. Just as Hitler was at a loss, the United States extended a helping hand. To prevent Britain and France from dominating Europe and threatening its own hegemony, the US provided Germany with a $16 billion loan, aiming to use Germany as a counterbalance to Britain and France. With this substantial aid, Germany secretly expanded its military. Before Nazi Germany became fully powerful, Hitler had to concoct various excuses to conceal his military buildup. Under the guise of producing civilian aircraft and tractors, Germany secretly manufactured thousands of planes, tanks, armored vehicles, and artillery. While the Treaty of Versailles forbade an air force, Germany openly established aviation clubs. With the army limited to 100,000 men, Hitler increased the police force to 800,000. These illogical actions completely circumvented the Treaty of Versailles, allowing Germany's military strength to grow rapidly. Hitler believed that only through strong military power could Germany break free from the chains imposed by Britain and France. Thus, he devoted the nation's full resources to military-industrial development, with military expenditures increasing daily. By 1938, Germany's military had expanded to 1.8 million men, with military spending accounting for 50% of the national economy, the highest in the world. By this time, Hitler could no longer contain his ambitions for expansion. In March 1938, he bloodlessly annexed Austria, a major oil-producing country. Surprisingly, Britain and France did nothing to stop this invasion, further emboldening Hitler. With abundant oil resources, Nazi Germany's national power grew even stronger. On March 15th, Hitler forcibly occupied Czechoslovakia. This time, Britain and France finally reacted, warning Hitler that further invasions would lead to war. However, Hitler, now completely irrational, believed Britain and France were too weak to confront Germany directly. Soon after, Hitler set his sights on Poland. On August 23, 1939, Germany and the Soviet Union signed the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, a non-aggression treaty that secretly divided Poland between them. This clearly indicated that war was imminent. On September 1, 1939, at dawn, Germany launched a blitzkrieg on Poland with 1.5 million troops, marking the official start of World War II. Germany's lightning tactics proved highly effective. General Guderian's 19th Armored Division rampaged across the battlefield, unstoppable. On September 3rd, Britain and France declared war on Germany. However, despite their declarations, they provided no military aid to Poland, quietly watching as Germany devoured the country, a policy known as appeasement. Under Germany's powerful offensive, Poland suffered heavy losses and retreated continuously. On September 17th, the Soviet Union, not wanting to be left out, invaded Poland from the east. With both Germany and the Soviet Union attacking, Poland was doomed. By October 6, 1939, Poland had been completely occupied by Germany and the Soviet Union after just 35 days of resistance. On November 26, 1939, the Soviet Union suddenly amassed 1 million troops on the Finnish border and launched a massive invasion. Many expected this to be a swift Soviet victory, but the war defied all expectations. Faced with the powerful Soviet army, Finland did not retreat. The Finnish military employed defensive tactics, leveraging the harsh winter swamps and dense forests to wage guerrilla warfare, inflicting heavy losses on the Soviets. The war lasted only 3 months, but the Soviet Union lost 400,000 men, including 22 divisions. Despite the victory, the Soviet Union only gained 1/10 of Finland's territory, tarnishing its reputation. This war revealed the weaknesses of the Soviet military to Hitler, setting the stage for Germany's future invasion of the Soviet Union. In April 1940, seeking more war resources, Hitler turned his attention to Northern Europe. On April 9th, Germany launched a blitzkrieg on Denmark, which fell within 4 hours due to its weak defenses. Germany then invaded Norway, a coastal country, using a combination of naval and air forces along with amphibious landings. The invasion began at night, catching Norway off guard. Within 12 hours, Norway's capital was captured. Despite reinforcements from Britain and France, Norway surrendered after 60 days. Nazi Germany continued its rapid conquests, taking Luxembourg in a day, the Netherlands in 5 days, and Belgium in 18 days. After these victories, Hitler turned his attention to France. However, France, boasting the strongest army in Europe with 3 million troops and the impregnable Maginot Line along the German border, posed a significant challenge. Hitler was deeply concerned about a direct confrontation with France. At this point, German General Manstein proposed a plan. Germany should feign an attack on France through Belgium, drawing out the British and French forces, then bypass the Maginot Line through the Ardennes forest and encircle the Allied forces. Hitler quickly adopted this strategy. On May 10, 1940, a large German armored force crossed the Ardennes forest, bypassed the Maginot Line, and launched an attack on France, cutting off the British and French forces' retreat. Under Germany's relentless offensive, the British and French forces were caught off guard and retreated continuously, eventually being pushed back to the French port of Dunkirk. With the help of numerous British vessels, 400,000 British and French troops were evacuated to Britain. Following this, Guderian's armored forces launched a blitzkrieg across the French plains, quickly capturing large swathes of French territory. By June 22, 1940, France, once considered Europe's strongest army, had been completely occupied by Germany after just 32 days of fighting. By this point, most of Europe had fallen into German hands, and Hitler grew increasingly arrogant. Confident in his invincibility, Hitler next planned to invade Britain with Operation Sea Lion. However, Britain's separation from the European mainland by the English Channel rendered Germany's blitzkrieg tactics ineffective. Hitler decided to use the Luftwaffe and Navy to defeat Britain, but he underestimated the strength of the British Royal Navy and Royal Air Force. On July 10, 1940, Hitler launched the Battle of Britain, the largest aerial battle in history. British and German aircraft clashed fiercely over Britain, with both sides deploying 8,000 planes. The battle lasted 4 months, with unprecedented intensity. Ultimately, Britain emerged victorious, dealing a heavy blow to Nazi Germany. Forced to shift his focus, Hitler turned his attention to the Soviet Union. On June 22, 1941, Hitler suddenly broke the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact and launched Operation Barbarossa, invading the Soviet Union with 3 army groups, 3,400 tanks, 1,500 aircraft, and 3.5 million troops. The unprepared Soviet Red Army suffered heavy losses, with 1,500 Soviet planes destroyed on the ground within hours. Under Germany's blitzkrieg, the Soviet border defenses were nearly annihilated. By September 1941, the Soviet Union had lost nearly 90 divisions, and German forces had advanced over 500 kilometers into Soviet territory, capturing much of Belarus, Lithuania, and Ukraine, and approaching Moscow. In response, Stalin mobilized the entire nation to resist the German invasion. To boost morale, on November 7, 1941, Stalin held a grand military parade in Moscow's Red Square, where hundreds of thousands of Soviet troops were inspected before heading to the front lines. Stalin also transferred Siberian troops from the Far East to the Moscow Moscow front. The Battle of Moscow had begun, with both sides committing 4 million troops and suffering 1.5 million casualties. This was a life-and-death struggle for the Soviet Union. Unfortunately for Germany, the winter of 1941-1942 was one of the coldest in the 20th century. With overextended supply lines and insufficient equipment, the German army suffered a crushing defeat. Stalin then launched a counteroffensive, breaking through German defenses around Moscow and pushing them back 200 kilometers. This not only shattered Hitler's plan to conquer the Soviet Union in 3 months, but also demonstrated the Soviet Red Army's determination to defend their homeland. On December 7, 1941, Japan launched a surprise attack on Pearl Harbor with 6 aircraft carriers and 440 planes. Caught off guard, the U.S. suffered 3,000 casualties, with 15 battleships and 170 aircraft destroyed. Japan lost over 100 soldiers and 29 planes. The next day, U.S. President Franklin D. Roosevelt declared war on Japan and subsequently on Germany and Italy, marking the full escalation of World War II. In early 1942, with Germany's ally Italy defeated in North Africa by British forces, Hitler appointed Rommel to lead the Afrika Korps, sending over 100,000 troops to support Italy in North Africa. Under Germany's rapid advance, much of North Africa fell to the Axis powers. Hitler then set his sights on Stalingrad, a key Soviet oil and coal region. Capturing Stalingrad would provide Germany with endless strategic resources, enabling them to gradually consume the Soviet Union. On July 17, 1942, Germany launched an assault on Stalingrad with 1.5 million troops and over 100 divisions. Stalin issued Order No. 227, forbidding any retreat under penalty of death. The Battle of Stalingrad, one of the bloodiest in human history, saw over 5 million troops engaged and 3.5 million casualties. The city was bombarded relentlessly, with soldiers on both sides fighting fiercely for every street and building. The average lifespan of a soldier was less than 24 hours, and officers lasted no more than 3 days. In the most intense fighting, survival was measured in minutes. Ultimately, the Soviet Red Army's indomitable will led them to victory. This battle marked a turning point in World War II, halting Germany's advance and severely crippling 1.5 million elite Nazi troops. It was the beginning of Nazi Germany's decline as the Soviet Union seized the strategic initiative. In October 1942, Britain defeated Germany in the Battle of El Alamein, putting Germany at a disadvantage in North Africa. In November, the US and UK launched Operation Torch, landing in North Africa and quickly capturing large territories. By March 17, 1943, the Allies launched the Tunisia campaign, which lasted 2 months. Despite initial Axis successes, the Allies' superior resources and numbers turned the tide, leading to the defeat of the Axis forces in North Africa. Over 230,000 Italian and German soldiers were captured, and the Axis powers were driven out of North Africa. In July 1943, the Allies launched the invasion of Sicily with nearly 500,000 troops, aiming to eliminate Italy's fascist government. After a month of fighting, Sicily was captured, opening the door to Europe from the south and dealing a heavy blow to Italy's government, leading to its eventual surrender. Realizing that a decisive victory on the Eastern Front was necessary to reverse the situation, Hitler focused on the Battle of Kursk, which began on July 5, 1943. This was the largest tank battle in history, with over 8,000 tanks, 5,000 aircraft, and 2.8 million troops involved. Despite Germany's initial successes, the Soviet Union's overwhelming numbers and resources led to a German defeat. By August 23rd, the Soviet Union had captured Kursk and Kharkov, marking the end of the battle. Germany lost 500,000 men and vast amounts of equipment and could no longer launch large-scale offensives. The Eastern Front was firmly in Soviet control. From January 1944, the Soviet Red Army launched continuous offensives, reclaiming large territories. On June 5, 1944, Allied Supreme Commander Eisenhower secretly amassed 2.88 million troops and over 2,000 aircraft in Britain. On June 6th, Operation Overlord began, with millions of Allied troops landing in Normandy, France. Under heavy aerial bombardment, the Allies quickly established a beachhead, and within 2 months, they had pushed German forces back to the Seine River, liberating Paris. On June 28, 1944, the Soviet Union launched Operation Bagration, a massive offensive in Belarus and Ukraine with 2 1.4 million troops. The German army was overwhelmed, and within 2 months, the Soviet Union had advanced 550 kilometers, annihilating Germany's Central Army Group and reclaiming Belarus and Ukraine, pushing into Poland. By this time, Germany was fighting on 2 fronts. With severe manpower shortages, Hitler implemented a brutal conscription policy, drafting all males aged 14 to 20. Despite these efforts, Germany could only muster 2 million troops, many of whom were elderly or poorly equipped. Despite the dire situation, Hitler remained determined to fight to the end. In December 1944, Hitler launched the Ardennes counteroffensive, his last gamble. Over 300,000 German troops attacked 700,000 Allied forces, initially achieving success. However, the Allies quickly regrouped and counterattacked, pushing the Germans back to the German border. Hitler's final gamble had failed, and Nazi Germany's fate was sealed. 1945 was Germany's darkest year. With the Soviet Union advancing from the east and the Allies from the west, Hitler remained delusional, hoping for a miracle. On January 12, 1945, Stalin launched the Vistula-Oder offensive with 3 million troops, 2,000 tanks, and 1,200 aircraft. Within 20 days, the Soviet Union had captured Poland and was approaching Germany. As the Soviet Red Army advanced rapidly, German propaganda portrayed the Soviets as beasts, causing mass panic and fleeing among the German populace. By February 10th, the Soviet Union had advanced 200 kilometers, reaching the Oder River, just 70 kilometers from Berlin. Exhausted and demoralized, Soviet troops paused their advance to regroup. In April 1945, the Soviet Union launched the Battle of Berlin with 2.6 million troops. Hitler, desperate to defend the capital, mobilized 800,000 troops, but they were no match for the Soviet forces. Many German soldiers surrendered, and by April 29th, Soviet troops had entered Berlin's city center. Realizing defeat was inevitable, Hitler committed suicide in his bunker on April 30th. On May 2nd, German Field Marshal Keitel signed the unconditional surrender, marking the end of World War II in Europe. Only Japan remained in the Pacific, but its resistance was short-lived. On July 26, 1945, the US, UK, and Soviet Union demanded Japan's unconditional surrender at the Potsdam Conference. When Japan refused, the US dropped atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki on August 6th and 9 respectively, killing 400,000 people. On August 15th, Japan surrendered, marking the end of World War II. From 1939 to 1945, 61 countries and nearly 2 billion people were involved in the war, resulting in over 90 million casualties. The war reshaped the world's political landscape for the next 50 years and profoundly altered human history. What are your thoughts on this?